Okay, so let's get into a story that, on the surface, looks absolutely perfect. We're in Oklahoma City, and we're talking about Dr. John Hamilton, a really well-respected OBGYN, and his wife, Susan. And from the outside looking in, these two had it all. You know, a life filled with success, incredible trips, and what everyone thought was a real storybook kind of love.
I mean, listen to this quote from a nurse who worked with them. That pretty much sums up what everyone saw. John was famous for showering Susan with these incredible gifts. He started with a Porsche on their wedding day. Friends would say they were basically inseparable, just building this amazing life with a gorgeous home, big parties, and these spontaneous, exotic vacations. For anyone on the outside, they were the definition of a perfect couple.
But as you can probably guess, that perfect image was about to be completely shattered. And it happened on Valentine's Day of 2001. A day that's supposed to be all about love was about to become a day of absolute, unbelievable horror. That morning didn't start with romance. It started with a completely frantic, almost hysterical call to 911. And the person on the other end of the line was Dr. Hamilton himself. He was telling the operator he'd just popped home from the hospital in between his surgeries, and he'd found Susan on their bathroom floor in a pool of blood. He claimed he was trying to give her CPR, just desperately trying to bring her back. Well, when the paramedics got there, the scene was just horrific. Susan had been viciously attacked. She'd been strangled with two of John's own neckties, and her head had been bludgeoned so brutally she was almost unrecognizable. But right away, a couple of things stood out to the investigators. One, there was zero sign of a break-in. And two, nothing, absolutely nothing, had been stolen from the house. At first, the investigators had a really solid theory. See, Dr. Hamilton performed abortions. And this was Oklahoma, a pretty conservative state. He had enemies. He and Susan had dealt with protests, threatening phone calls. People had even put up wanted posters with his face on them. So you have to ask, could this have been a targeted attack from some kind of extremist? It seemed very, very possible. But the more the detectives started digging, the more that whole theory just kind of started to fall apart. That perfect, idyllic image of the Hamiltons' marriage began to crack, and the investigators started to think, maybe the killer wasn't an outsider after all. A few things just weren't adding up. The police found the Valentine's card Susan had given John that very morning, and inside she'd written this weird note. I bought this 2 weeks ago, so I guess maybe it doesn't seem as appropriate. Strange, right? Then they pulled phone records, and they found dozens of calls between Dr. Hamilton and an exotic dancer. Friends of Susan's later confirmed that, yeah, she'd found out about those calls and had told them she was thinking about divorce. And the final weird detail? All of Susan's expensive jewelry, the first thing a robber would grab, was found hidden away in a drawer, almost like someone was trying to stage a robbery that never actually happened. So for the prosecution, it all came down to the timeline. They laid it out like this. Dr. Hamilton does his first surgery of the day, he goes home, and then he gets paged because he's running late for his second one. The prosecutors believed that in that small window of time, a huge argument broke out. He killed Susan, and then, and this is the shocking part, he went back to the hospital and performed a complex surgery like nothing had happened. Now, you have to remember, the case against Dr. Hamilton was completely circumstantial. There was no smoking gun. So his defense team decided to go on the offensive. They hired a guy named Tom Bevel, who is this huge, nationally known expert in crime scene reconstruction and blood stain pattern analysis. The plan was to use hard science to poke holes in the prosecution's story. So Bevel's whole job was to look at the blood spatter on Dr. Hamilton's clothes. The defense was hoping he would get on the stand and testify that, hey, these blood patterns are totally consistent with someone trying to give CPR to a loved one, not with someone violently attacking them. The defense calls their star expert to the stand. They're feeling pretty good, thinking this guy is about to help clear their client. But what happened next? It was just pure, unscripted courtroom drama, something that nobody, especially not the defense lawyers, ever saw coming. The prosecutor, Wes Lane, is cross-examining the defense's expert, and he asks this really simple, open-ended question. He just asks Tom Bevel if there was any piece of evidence that he thought the prosecution might have missed. And Bevel, who is under oath to tell the whole truth, just says yes. He tells the court that he found a tiny blood stain on the inside of Dr. Hamilton's shirt cuff, something everyone else had missed. And then he dropped the bombshell. Bevel testified that the only way a stain could get there was from what's called cast-off, blood flying off a weapon as the wearer's arm comes down in a powerful blow. He called it, and this is a direct quote, a neon sign that the person wearing that shirt was involved in the beating. The defense's own expert witness had just sunk their case. After that, it was game over. The jury was out for less than 2 hours before they came back and found Dr. John Hamilton guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. So you'd think the case would be closed, right? But for the last 2 decades, while Dr. Hamilton has been in prison, insisting he's innocent, a whole new chapter to the story has opened up. And now, the very science that convicted him is being put on trial. The Oklahoma Innocence Project has picked up John Hamilton's case, and their entire argument hinges on this. In the 20 years since his trial, our understanding of bloodstain pattern analysis has completely changed. Major reports have come out questioning how reliable it really is, suggesting it's more of a subjective art than a hard, objective science. You know, as Andrea Miller from the Innocence Project says, science evolves. It finds its own mistakes and it corrects them. Their argument is that the legal system has to be able to do that too. They believe that the blood evidence that convicted Hamilton just isn't scientifically solid anymore, and they're pushing to get new DNA testing done on items from the crime scene. So this whole case leaves us with a really powerful question. John Hamilton was convicted based on what seemed like a slam-dunk scientific conclusion, and it came from his own expert. But if the foundation of that science is now seen as shaky, how does our justice system deal with that? It's a question that really makes you think about what truth and finality actually mean in our courts.